Ever wonder what secrets lurk behind the gleaming facade of your favorite fast food chain? Mark Olsen, CEO of the rapidly expanding Burger Bliss empire, was about to find out, in the most gut-wrenching way possible. Leaning against the hood of his sleek sedan, parked a discreet distance from a bustling Burger Bliss outlet, Mark felt a knot of unease tightening in his stomach. The neon glow of the Burger Bliss sign, usually a symbol of his success, seemed to mock him tonight. On paper, his business was booming. 15 locations scattered across the state, profits consistently exceeding projections, and a seemingly loyal customer base. But lately, a disturbing wave of complaints had been flooding in. Patrons lamented rude employees, glacial service, and a disconcerting number of order mishaps. Mark's instincts screamed that something was fundamentally wrong. He had painstakingly built Burger Bliss from a single food truck, pouring his heart and soul into every aspect of the business. Now, as CEO, he was trapped in an endless cycle of board meetings, financial reports, and strategic growth initiatives. He hadn't stepped foot inside one of his restaurants in over a year. Most of the frontline staff wouldn't even recognize him if he walked through the door. It had become a faceless corporate entity, managed by district supervisors and store managers, all reporting impressive-sounding metrics, but seemingly disconnected from the actual customer experience. Mark realized, with a chilling certainty, that he was utterly detached from the reality on the ground. He decided to take drastic action. Shedding his usual impeccably tailored suit and tie, Mark donned a worn pair of jeans, a faded hoodie pulled low over his head, and a nondescript baseball cap. He'd even cultivated a deliberately scruffy beard over the past few weeks, ensuring he was virtually unrecognizable. He looked nothing like the polished, confident CEO displayed in the occasional company-wide email. Tonight, he was just another customer, blending into the evening crowd. He tugged the cap lower, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. The familiar aroma of sizzling burgers and crispy fries filled the air, but something felt amiss. The atmosphere lacked the cheerful buzz he remembered. Approaching the counter, he was met by a young woman with weary eyes and a name tag that read Sarah in faded lettering. "Welcome," she mumbled, her voice flat and devoid of any genuine enthusiasm. She barely glanced at him. "Hi," Mark responded, trying to inject some warmth into his tone. "Can I get a #1 combo, extra pickles?" Sarah mechanically punched the order into the register, still avoiding eye contact. "That'll be $7.49. Mark handed her a $10 bill. Before she could process the transaction, a booming voice erupted from the kitchen. "Sarah, get a move on. You're slower than molasses in January." Mark's head snapped towards the kitchen. A man, probably in his late 30s, clad in a Burger Bliss manager's uniform, stood glaring at Sarah. He was broad-shouldered and imposing, radiating an air of arrogance that immediately grated on Mark's nerves. Sarah's cheeks flushed crimson as she fumbled with the cash drawer. "I'm sorry, Mr. Peterson. I'm sorry."
"Sorry doesn't cut it,"
Mr. Peterson barked.
"You're lucky I haven't fired you yet. I swear I don't know why I even bother keeping you around."
A wave of nausea washed over Mark. The manager's tone was not only unprofessional but utterly dehumanizing. Sarah handed Mark his change, her hands trembling slightly. She pointedly avoided eye contact. "Are you okay?" Mark asked quietly, his voice filled with genuine concern. Sarah simply nodded, her gaze fixed on the floor. She quickly retreated to the bagging station, disappearing behind a mountain of paper bags. As Mark stepped aside to wait for his order, the manager sauntered up to the counter, forcing a strained smile. "Hey, buddy," he said, extending a greasy hand. "Sorry about the wait. You know how it is. Hard to find good help these days." Mark raised an eyebrow, unsure how to respond. Before he could speak, the manager leaned in conspiratorially, lowering his voice. "Between you and me, Sarah's a lost cause. Always messing up orders, dragging her feet. But corporate won't let me fire her. Something about needing to meet diversity quotas." He rolled his eyes, a gesture that dripped with contempt. Mark's heart plummeted. The casual cruelty of the statement landed like a physical blow. Sarah wasn't simply being reprimanded, she was being reduced to a statistic, a mere checkbox on a corporate form. Summoning every ounce of self-control, Mark managed to keep his voice level. "Isn't it your job to train her if she's struggling?" The manager scoffed. "Train her? I don't have time to babysit. Anyway, enjoy your meal, buddy." He slapped the counter and swaggered away, leaving Mark seething with barely suppressed rage. Finding a vacant booth, Mark sat down to eat, but his appetite had vanished. He began to observe the restaurant with a more critical eye. He noticed Sarah was single-handedly managing a multitude of tasks, wiping tables, delivering orders, and manning the register. Meanwhile, other employees lounged around, idly chatting and seemingly oblivious to the growing line of frustrated customers. Only Sarah appeared to care, tirelessly working despite the constant pressure and criticism. Mark decided to extend his undercover operation. He watched Sarah patiently navigate a confrontation with a particularly rude customer, apologizing profusely for a minor delay even though it wasn't her fault. She clearly possessed a strong work ethic and a genuine desire to please the customers, yet she was being treated like dirt. The breaking point came when Sarah accidentally dropped a tray of fries. The manager stormed over, his voice booming for the entire restaurant to hear. "Are you completely useless? You're costing me money, you clumsy idiot!" Sarah looked on the verge of tears, but she silently bent down to clean up the mess, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Mark could no longer contain himself. His hands clenched into fists as he wrestled with his rising fury. He had come here to observe, but what he had witnessed was far worse than he could have imagined. It wasn't just bad service. It was a toxic environment, fueled by blatant disrespect and unchecked arrogance. He knew he couldn't walk out of there without taking action. Abruptly abandoning his half-eaten meal, Mark stood up. He didn't have a concrete plan, but he knew he couldn't remain silent. He strode towards the counter, where the manager was now leaning against the soda machine, casually scrolling through his phone as if nothing had happened. The sight only intensified Mark's anger. Sarah was still crouched on the floor, meticulously picking up the scattered fries, her movements slow and hesitant. A few customers cast sympathetic glances her way, but no one intervened. Mark couldn't shake the image of her red-rimmed, tear-filled eyes. "Hey," he said, his voice sharp as he approached the manager. The man looked up, startled. "Yeah? What's up?" "You're the manager here, right?" Mark asked, his tone deceptively calm but firm. "Yeah, that's me," he replied, puffing out his chest slightly. "Is there a problem?" Mark gestured towards Sarah, still on her knees. "That's the problem, the way you've been treating her." The manager's expression hardened. "Look, buddy, I don't know who you think you are, but this is none of your business. She's my employee, and I'll handle her how I see fit." Mark took a step closer, lowering his voice so that only the manager could hear. "It is my business when someone is publicly humiliated. Do you honestly believe that's effective leadership?" The manager blinked momentarily, thrown off balance by Mark's intensity. But he quickly recovered, a sneer twisting his lips. "What are you, some kind of corporate watchdog? Go finish your fries and let me do my job." Mark clenched his jaw, fighting to control his temper. He knew that confronting the manager as an anonymous customer would be futile. He needed to gather more evidence, to understand the full extent of the problem. He turned and walked out of the restaurant, but not before catching Sarah's eye. She looked up briefly, her face etched with exhaustion and embarrassment, then quickly returned to her task. Mark made a mental note to speak with her later, in a more private setting. The following day, Mark returned to the Burger Bliss location, this time adopting an even more convincing disguise. He donned the uniform of a food delivery driver, complete with a branded cap and a thermal delivery bag. This role would allow him to move freely throughout the restaurant without attracting undue attention. As he entered, he overheard the manager, whose name tag read Paul, berating another employee, a teenage boy who looked no older than 16. The boy was struggling to carry a heavy box of frozen burger patties into the back room. "Come on, Alex. What are you, a toddler? Use your legs." Paul barked, shaking his head in feigned exasperation. Alex mumbled an apology, his face flushed with exertion. Paul muttered something under his breath and strode off. Mark approached Alex as he placed the box down with a heavy thud. "Hey kid, you okay?" Alex glanced up, startled. Yeah, I'm fine. Just trying to keep up, you know?" "Is he always like that?" Mark asked, nodding towards Paul, who was now chatting with another employee. Alex hesitated, then shrugged. "Pretty much. He's worse when the store's busy, but I need the job, so I just deal with it." A knot of anger tightened in Mark's chest. He thanked Alex and made his way to the back, where Sarah was restocking shelves. She looked up as he entered, her face lighting up with faint recognition. "Hey," Mark said softly. "You're Sarah, right?" She nodded, looking wary. "Yeah, can I help you?" "I was in here yesterday," Mark began. "I saw how Paul treated you. Has it always been like that?" Sarah's eyes darted to the door, as if anticipating Paul's sudden appearance. "Look, I don't want any trouble. I just do my job and try to stay out of his way." "You shouldn't have to work under those conditions," Mark said firmly. Sarah sighed. "It's not just me. He's hard on everyone. But people need the hours, so we don't say anything. It's not like corporate cares." A wave of shame washed over Mark. He was corporate, and he had been completely oblivious to the reality within his own stores. He nodded, his mind racing. "Thank you for telling me," he said. "I promise, things are going to change." Sarah gave him a skeptical look, but didn't respond. Later that evening, Mark sat in his car, scribbling furiously in a legal pad. He had witnessed enough to conclude that the problems weren't isolated to Paul. The entire store seemed to operate under a culture of fear and apathy, where employees were afraid to speak up and management was too complacent to care. He decided it was time to reveal his true identity. The next morning, Mark arrived at the Burger Bliss location earlier than usual, dressed in his typical power suit. He entered the store and asked to speak with the manager. Paul appeared a few minutes later, his face etched with annoyance. "Can I help you?" Mark extended his hand. "Mark Olsen, CEO." Paul's face drained of color. His eyes darted around the room, as if searching for an escape route. He forced a weak smile. "Oh, wow, Mr. Olsen, what a surprise. Let's talk in the office." Inside the cramped office, Mark wasted no time. "I came here undercover this week and saw firsthand how you treat your team. It's unacceptable," Paul stammered, attempting to defend himself. I was just trying to keep things running smoothly. You know how hard it is to find good workers these days." Mark held up a hand to silence him. "Stop. I've seen enough. You don't respect your employees, and that reflects poorly on this company. Effective immediately, you're terminated." Paul's mouth opened and closed, but he offered no argument. He knew he had been caught red-handed. After Paul had gathered his belongings and left the premises, Mark assembled the entire staff in the dining area. Sarah, Alex, and the rest of the team looked bewildered but curious. "I'm Mark Olsen, the CEO of this company," he announced. "This week I went undercover to see what was really happening in my stores. What I saw here was unacceptable. No one should feel disrespected or undervalued at their job." He turned to Sarah. "Sarah, your work ethic and dedication haven't gone unnoticed. From today forward, you'll be promoted to shift supervisor, with a pay raise to match." Sarah's eyes widened in disbelief. "Wait, what? Are you serious?" "Completely," Mark said with a genuine smile. He continued, addressing the rest of the team. "Changes are coming. You'll all receive proper training, better schedules, and a safe, supportive environment to work in. And if anyone ever feels mistreated, my door is always open." A spontaneous round of applause erupted throughout the room. Sarah wiped away tears of relief. As Mark exited the restaurant that day, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about maximizing profits. It was about fostering a workplace where every employee felt valued and respected. He would ensure that no one in his company ever felt invisible again. What can we learn from Mark Olsen's experience? The story shows us the importance of staying connected to the ground level of our businesses, of valuing every member of the team, and of being willing to take decisive action to correct injustices. What leadership lessons resonate most with you from Mark's journey? How can you apply these principles in your own life, regardless of your profession? Remember, true success isn't measured solely in profits, but in the positive impact you have on the people around you. Wishing you good health and a fulfilling journey. If you found this story inspiring, please subscribe to our channel for more insightful narratives and actionable advice.